In this series of lessons, we're going to be looking at blues rock phrasing, more specifically call and response phrasing. Now, what I mean by that is if you play a phrase and then the next phrase that you play has something to do with the previous phrase. So it's almost like a question and an answer, sometimes called question and answer, call and response. Not only are we going to learn a load of really great licks that you can incorporate into your own playing, whether it's blues or funk or rock or metal or jazz, but we're going to learn how to phrase musically so that we're not just kind of running up and down the scale, but we're leaving adequate spaces, which are just as important as the notes you play after all. You know, we're kind of relying on things like repetition, you know, so you're kind of playing a phrase and then embellishing it or repeating it. And it's very much the way I play generally when I'm kind of soloing, whether I'm playing blues or whether I'm playing rock. You know, it's good to develop a habit of really listening to yourself as you play. So if you play a phrase, you know, something you like the sound of, then play it again or play a musical response to it. There are plenty of examples in the solos. Now, I will say early on that whenever you're learning a solo, in particular the 3 solos in this course, it's really important to listen to them a whole bunch of times before you tackle them, just so you kind of know them inside out, in the same way as you would be able to perhaps kind of hum or memorize the sound of the solo to Stairway to Heaven or Comfortably Numb, for example. You know, it's really going to help when I'm breaking down these solos that you kind of know where you are. So do keep referencing the original recordings. Now, everything we're going to be learning is going to be in the key of G. We're working actually with static vamps. So what I mean by that is we are playing, we're not playing 12-bar blues. All of our 3 backing tracks, although they're different grooves, they're all based on just one chord, which is a G7, a static G7. Now, static means that it's not moving. There are no chord changes or anything. Even if there are riffs within those backing tracks, it's based on that harmony. So, you know, we're not worrying about changing chords or anything like that. You know, I've made plenty of tutorials on 12-bar blues. But with something like this, we're kind of working more with groupings or kind of bar numbers of, you know, kind of 2-bar phrases, 4-bar phrases, 8-bar phrases, you know, 16-bar solos. So kind of blocks of 4 rather than 12. And this is great because you can apply this to any style of music. So although we're using blues, you know, kind of blues rock as our core template, this is really kind of transferable and applicable to other styles. And I've avoided playing the shuffle rhythm just because, you know, there's a lot of material on that. I have a website called absolutebluesguitar.com, which you can go in and really kind of hone your blues vocabulary, you know, dealing with kind of classic electric blues. But with these grooves, we've got a Bo Diddley groove, a kind of Bo Diddley Sun Clave. We've got a kind of John Lee Hooker boogie, and we've got a funk vamp. And as I say, they're all static. They're all based on a G7 chord. You know, so you can play G minor pentatonic throughout. You can play G major pentatonic throughout if you so desired. Or you can mix the two. Now, if your fretboard knowledge isn't particularly great, I have a course called Master the Fretboard that takes you from having very little knowledge of the fretboard to being able to visualize any scale, chord, or arpeggio anywhere on the neck. So something like that would be really, really helpful because, you know, we're going to kind of get straight in and look at the licks and look at the kind of phrasing and the usage rather than the core scales. But, you know, it'd be really helpful to know the minor pentatonic scale. In this case, it would be G minor pentatonic. And if you know all 5 positions of that, then you'll be at an advantage because we're going to be kind of, you know, playing it all over the fretboard. And to also know the G major pentatonic scale in as many positions as you can. Because we're going to be using blues tonality. And what I mean by that is Well, some people see it as mixing the major and the minor pentatonic scales. I don't really think of it that way because you can get a slightly disjointed approach that way. You know, you might play a phrase that's kind of overtly major, and then go up 3 frets and go play the same thing, you know, but in a minor box, and that can be a little bit kind of disjointed. But the way I like to see it, and on my Master the Fretboard course I go into more depth with this approach, but the way I like to see it is, and this is the way a lot of blues players kind of generally think, is using the minor pentatonic scale as the core framework and adding the major third. You know, you may have heard that sound before. So we've got a major third there on the 4th fret on the G string, down there on the 2nd fret on the A string, and adding the 6th, the major 6th. There's one there on the 5th fret on the B string. There's one there on the 2nd fret on the D string, and adding the 9th or the 2nd. So there's one here on the 5th fret of the high E string, also on the 5th fret of the low E string, because of course there would be. Same rules apply on both E strings. And what you actually get with that, you get a kind of hybrid scale. If you played it in and of itself, it's not going to sound like music. I mean, that doesn't really sound like the blues. It's kind of how tastefully you kind of, you know, weave these sounds in and of each other. But you do actually get the overlay of the major and the minor pentatonic scales. Because if we think about the intervallic functions that make up the minor pentatonic scale, and if this goes over your head, if any of this goes over your head, don't worry, just learn the licks and have fun with it. And, you know, there's plenty of information on this kind of thing. I've made courses on this kind of thing. But, you know, just to kind of give you a bit of a primer, the intervallic functions that make up the minor pentatonic scale, regardless of the key you're in, are the root, the flat 3 or minor third, the 4th, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, and the flat 7. And then it just repeats: root, flat 3, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, flat 7, root, flat 3. So only 5 notes, you know, penta meaning 5. The intervallic functions that make up the major pentatonic scale are the root, the 2nd or the 9th, the major 3rd, then you've got the perfect 5th, and then the major 6th, and you're back to the root again. And then it repeats. So we're only adding, by overlaying the major pentatonic scale over the minor pentatonic scale, we're only actually adding 3 extra notes. The root note is going to be the same. We've got the major 3rd, and we've got the major 6th and the 2nd. So when you put all that together, you know, if you compare the major and the minor pentatonic scale, the root we've got in common, the 5th we've got in common, you know, so we end up with an overlay of those 2 scales without having to kind of jump up. I don't know if you know that trick where to get a major pentatonic scale, you play the same shapes, but you move down 3 frets, and then, you know, to get a minor pentatonic scale from a major pentatonic scale, you go up 3 frets. You know, it kind of saves us doing that, and we start to kind of see the neck as kind of one big scale. And some people call this the hybrid blues scale or the hybrid pentatonic scale, or some people would call it the Mixolydian scale, because essentially you've got a Mixolydian scale, but you've got a minor third in there as well. Now this minor third over a dominant chord, dominant 7th chord, you don't want to kind of hang on it too much. You want to always be kind of slightly bending it sharp, teasing it to sound like the major third, or play the minor third and then hammer on to the major third. That will give you that kind of bluesy, kind of sweet and sour kind of sound, you know. You don't want to go the other way around and play major third to minor third. Again, if all this theory is going over your head, don't worry, just have fun with the licks. If we think about the intervallic makeup of a dominant 7th chord, if you know anything about chord theory, you know, playing a G7 chord in any position, it's made up of 4 different notes. Even if you're playing it across 6 strings, there are only 4 different notes. You've got the root, you've got major third, you've got a perfect fifth, and you've got the flat 7. You know, if you think of Twist and Shout or Let's Dance by David Bowie, you know, you'll hear that. But when we play the blues, we play over it generally with a minor pentatonic scale, which has a minor third. So that minor third is kind of an outlier there. It doesn't really belong, but because blues has been around for so long, to our ears now, in modern times, it sounds absolutely fine. You know, it sounds kind of acceptable. But it's always nice to kind of send it on its way with a slight, what we would call a blue note or a microtonal bend. A good analogy would be Robert Plant in Black Dog, where he goes, He's not going, he's got that minor third, it's got a slight bend on it. So that will give you the sound. You know, if you think about, if you know your modes and you know the Mixolydian scale, you'll know that you get root, a second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, flat 7, back to the root. It's kind of what we're dealing with here. But we are adding that minor third. You wouldn't play it as a scale, but if we're playing licks, that's the sound. That's the sound of the blues. You know, that's the sound of kind of playing over dominant chords. So kind of Mixolydian blues, some people might call it. So the 3 solos contain a lot of licks. Some of them have licks in common, but because we're playing over different grooves, they might kind of sound different. I would advise that you learn the solos note for note if you can, but if you don't, just use the ideas and the licks and the concepts as a kind of springboard, you know, to play over the backing track and think about your phrasing and think about, you know, the meaning of each note, you know, the kind of placement of each note, and you can play a lot more kind of meaningful licks and solos. Now, as I say, we're working with 3 different grooves. We've got a kind of Bo Diddley, Sun Clave kind of Bo Diddley groove, all in the key of G, as are all of these backing tracks, and that will be at, I think, 100 BPM. We're dealing with a kind of funk blues, 3, 4, 1, which I think is 105 BPM, and we're also playing like a John Lee Hooker boogie, which I think is around about 172 BPM. You know, that's a kind of boom boom, you know, kind of John Lee Hooker, or you could think of Lagrange by ZZ Top, you know, or Satch Boogie. You know, there are so many kind of songs that kind of have that sound. So these solos are kind of semi-improvised. What I did, I put the backing tracks on, hit record, played some ideas, and after a couple of takes, it kind of started to bed in what I wanted to play. So when I'm teaching you these licks, I'm actually going back and learning my own solos, because I haven't kind of memorized them. They're not kind of written solos, but of course I will tab them out. You will have tabbed versions of them. So if I make any mistakes with kind of fret numbers or anything like that in the breakdowns, then the tab is going to be a lot more accurate than kind of trying to recall them from memory. Just bear that in mind, but I'll do my best. now we're going to look at the Bo Diddley groove solo, which I think is 100 BPM. And it's just based on a G major chord. Just does that forever, basically. Now, there are a lot of kind of popular songs that use that groove. You know, Faith by George Michael, Desire by U2, hundreds of songs. You know, it's kind of like, it was quite popular in the 80s as a kind of pop staple, but, you know, it goes, obviously goes way, way back to kind of early blues. Now, I say that these, all of these solos are kind of based on a G7 or a G dominant tonality. In this case, I'm just playing a major chord, but you can imply, you can play this with a dominant chord, but it's kind of implying the dominant chord, because a major chord, G major, is made up of the root, the major third, and the perfect fifth. But, you know, to get that bluesy sound, if you're playing a load of kind of F notes on top of it, you get that sound anyway. So I start out, we're kind of doing that B.B. King thing of bouncing. He would kind of often kind of bounce between the root and the sixth of the scale. That's kind of what we're doing. We're starting on the 7th fret on the G, sliding up to 9, and then 8 on the B string, and then so that's 9, and then you play 8 twice. So, and then that lick, that's 9 on the G, 8 on the B, bend 10 on the B string, drop the bend, slide it up half a step, slide it back down again, and then pull off to 8, and then hammer on to 10 on the B string. This next lick, what we got there, we're bending actually from the minor third, but we bend it up a whole step. So it's 11 on the B string, bend it up a whole step, and then that's 8-10 on the high E, and then that's 10 on the B string, bend up a whole step. You've got that slidey bend again, and then so that's 9 on the G, 8 B, 10 B, back to 8, which is the root note on the B string. That can be thought of as a musical response. If this is a question, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. That's your question, and then your answer. So if we put that together, we've got 2, 3, 4, and. Now, if you've listened to the solo enough times, which I recommend you do, otherwise this won't make very much sense at all, the next phrase has a lot to do with the previous phrase. In fact, it's almost identical, and that's a very musical way to solo. You know, not only are we leaving spaces, but we're kind of going into the kind of building a theme, building a hook. So if we go from the start, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, and then we go. Second part. And then, but this part, it's almost the same. So we go, I think maybe I kind of Maybe those two phrases are the same. You'll see in the tab it will be accurate, but close enough. And then same bend, but then we just hammer on from nowhere to the 9th fret on the G, and that's the only difference. But you know, that's referencing the first phrase. So put that together: 1, 2, 3. Then response, and then again. Then we've got this phrase, slowly. So we change position here, and what we're doing, we're kind of in, you know, based around position 1 of the G minor pentatonic scale. That's 5 on the B string, you bend up half a step. We do that slidey bend again. So we release the bend, slide it up to the 6th fret, back down, and then pull off to 3 on the B. And then that's 5, G, 3, B. And then, so that's kind of outlining the chord there. We're going from the flat 3 to the major 3rd to the root to the flat 7. In other words, 3 on the G, hammer on to 5, and then 5 pull off to 3 on the D string, and then that's 5 on the A string, 3 on the G, sorry, 3 on the D, should I say, and then back to 5 on the A, slide down to 3, and then that's 1 on the A string, hammer on to 2, and then an open G taking us back to the root. It's quite a nice phrase. So let's put the first part of that solo together. So now we move on to another theme completely. What we've got here is 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. So we're using a lot of chromaticism now. You know, it's almost a kind of jazz thing. We're using chromatic passing tones and kind of bebop enclosures and stuff, which is something that comes up in my playing quite a lot. So this is why I'm saying, you know, kind of blues rock. You know, we're mixing blues, we're mixing jazz, we're mixing a little bit of kind of country and even a little bit of kind of bluegrass in a way. But we're outlining the G7 arpeggio, and then if you know your arpeggios, if not, it's covered in my Master the Fretboard course. But we're using chromatic approach notes. So we've got, that'd be the first part. We actually go up. Now this approach note here, we're actually approaching the root note from a fret below. You know, so we're kind of playing a major 7, but we're not really. It's just a passing tone. So we're going. And this bit, we're just following the arpeggio, so we're going, so 2 on the low E string, and then slide up to 3 on the low E string, so that's a root, 2nd fret on the A string, which is the 3rd, 5th fret on the D string, which is the 5th of the chord, and then 3rd fret on the D string, which is the flat 7. And then we have a bunch of, we kind of have this chromatic enclosure, this kind of, so that's on the G string, it's 2, 5, 2, 3, 4. We're walking up, we're going from the second to the fourth, and then the second flat 3 to the major third. So we go. And then we continue to outline the G7 chord. We're playing a G triad, root, third, fifth. So 5 on the D, 4 on the G, 3 on the B. So, and then, so this bit, classic kind of bebop enclosure. We're outlining the chord, but we're going from the flat 7. We're kind of going 6, 5, 4, and then down to 2, and then slide up to 3. We're kind of surrounding the 5th degree of the chord, and then we walk down the arpeggio again. So that'd be 3 on the G, that's the third, and then to the root note on the 5th, and then to the 7th on the 3rd fret. So we get. That's quite a nice lick. You could play that again, you know. I'll actually hammer on to the root note, but you could play that as a kind of, you know, just play the same phrase again if you wanted to. 3, 4. Yeah, maybe change it at the end. But what I did, I played this phrase, and then I take the same rhythm, or a similar rhythm, so just 16th notes, but I'm still working around the arpeggio of the G7 chord. So what we've got there, we've got, this is a kind of bluesy phrase, we've got the flat 3 on the 3rd fret of the G string, hammering onto the major 3rd on the 4th fret, and then 3 on the B, to 6 on the B, back to 3, and then that's 5, 4, 3, 2 on the high E. Just kind of walking down, and then we're landing on the flat 7. So that's 6 on the B, 3 on the high E. And then we go 5, 4, 3 on the G. And then, yeah, more chromaticism there. This time it's all on the G string. It's 5, 2, 3, and then up to 4, so landing on that major 3rd. But I'm actually taking the 5th with me as well. I'm playing the double stop. You know, just to kind of get some chord tones in and, you know, kind of make it sound a bit more interesting. 3, 4. 3, 4. So, you know, similar rhythm. The next part of the solo, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, you know, we're taking a similar rhythm now. moving further up the neck. Yeah, so we're going from the minor third to the major third. In other words, 11 to 12. And then 10, 12 on the high E. Bend that up half a step. It's the same as doing this. You know, we're bending the sixth up to the flat 7. That's a sixth. Bend it up to a chord tone, which is a flat 7. We've got that kind of, you know, slidey bend. I mean, I do those probably too much. There's about 6 of them in this solo. Yeah, pulling off to 10. I think we go 13 on the B, back to 10 on the high E. A little bit of syncopation there. So that's going between 11 to 12 on the 11 and 12 kind of on the B string, sliding up, catching 10 on the high E, and then a little bit of chromaticism there, going from the root, walking it down to the flat 7. So 12, 11, 10 on the G, and then just hammering on back to the root note. So we've got 3, 4. So we get 3, 4. And then we break out of it by playing this more bluesy lick. So what I'm using there is what is kind of known as the rule of threes, or what I interpret to be the rule of threes, where we're kind of playing 3 licks. Maybe it's a rule of 4s in this case, the 4th lick being the kind of outlier, but we're playing 3 licks that have got something to do with one another lyrically, rhythmically, as in, you know, they use a lot of chromaticism and they share the same kind of rhythmic structure. 3, 4. Second lick. There we go. And then this is different. See, if I just played that lick on its own, or played a load of licks that had nothing to do with each other, you wouldn't be creating a theme. But, you know, because you've established, you've kind of presented the listener with a theme or a hook or something to kind of latch onto, then you can kind of go. And that almost becomes the response, you know, the question and answer. I mean, with question and answer phrasing, it doesn't have to be question and answer or call and response. It could be question, 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 answer. Or you could ask the musical question really early in the solo and then answer it, you know, 8 bars later, or reiterate the question again, you know. So these are just devices. These are just improvisational devices. I've got a load of stuff on YouTube about improvisation techniques as well. Just things that a lot of musicians use, and a lot of musicians kind of initially think about, but then you don't think about it anymore. You kind of, you know, internalize it, and it just comes out in your playing, you know, kind of naturally. But with this lick, again, we're kind of in position 1 of the G minor pentatonic scale, all the way up here. But we've got this, you know, bluesy lick. We've got the flat 5 in there. Now the flat 5 is fair game in any of this, if you know the blues scale. You know, down here in this box, you've got one on the 4th fret on the A string, and you've got one on the 6th fret on the G string. You know, that's fair game. You expect to hear that whether you're playing over a kind of, you know, kind of Mixolydian thing, you know, dominant chord, or whether you're playing over a minor 7 chord and doing a kind of Dorian thing, or even an Aeolian thing, the flat 5, as long as you don't kind of sit on it, is a great passing tone. So that is featured in this scale. But what I've got there, I'm going, so that's 18 on the high E, and then, so 15, and then pull off to 18 on the B, and then pull off to 15 on the B string. And then we kind of do a similar thing. It's the same lick, but the first note has changed. We're actually playing 16 on the B string and teasing that slightly sharp. But that bit's the same. And then, so this bit, that's 18 on the G string, 15 on the B, and then a series of pull-offs from 18, 17 to 15 on the G. That's the kind of Muddy Waters lick there. So that's 17 D, 17 G, back to 17 on the D. And then 15 to 16 on the G, 17 on the D string. And then pull off to 15 on the D string. And then a kind of grace note slide down from 19 on the A string to 17, and then pull off to 13 on the A, and then to hammer onto that major third on the 14th fret, and then we jump over to the root note on the 12th fret on the G string. Next up, we've kind of got this almost kind of bluegrassy thing, which goes 3, 4, and. So what I'm doing there, I'm just having a bit of fun with, you know, when you're playing in G, you can really exploit the open G and D strings and the 5th frets of both strings as well. You know, kind of really play around between those two strings. So I'm kind of playing a rhythm that I played this for years. This is kind of one of my licks from when I was in my teens. It's kind of like a go-to thing that I'll do occasionally if it fits the right tempo. But so what we've got there, we've got on the G string, we've got 3, hammer to 5, pull off to 3, and then pull off to open. And then we play that, so we're pulling off to an open G, but then we're playing a G note on the D string on the 5th fret. And then back to the open G. So we've got, and then we're just playing a series of kind of fretted notes and pull off. So that's 3 on the G, pull off, 5 on the D, pull off, and then that's 3 on the D, pull off, 5 D, pull off, 3 G, pull off, followed by 5 on the D and pull off. So put that together, we've got. it's more or less the same thing twice. Then I play it again. Instead of doing that bit at the end, we go. Slide up to, these are guide tones. If you're familiar with guide tones are generally the third and the seventh of a chord. So you're not playing the root or the fifth, but if the bass player's doing their job, you can imply the sound of, in this case, a G7 chord, just by using a double stop of the third, which is on the fifth fret on the G, and the seventh, which is on the sixth fret of the B string, and I just slide into that. So we get that first part, we put that together, we go 3 and 4 and. And then we do the first part again. That doesn't need breaking down. And then we do this 4 times. So that's 3 all on the G string. It's 3, hammer onto 5, pull off to 3, hammer onto open, and then hit the open string twice after that. Kind of reminds me of Super Unknown by Soundgarden. I mean, in context, it doesn't sound like Soundgarden, but that's what it's kind of putting me in mind of now. So if you put all that together, that's the first half. So we put it all together, we've got this 1, 2, 3, 4. Up to tempo. So that's that. You can kind of, I'm slightly bending the flat 3 and the flat 7, not the root note, because that would sound odd, but if you want to get a little bit more kind of down and dirty with it, you can, when you can, if there's time, just kind of, you can give that a little bit of a bend. Not too much. So the second half of that, we play the first part again, I think. Yeah, that is the same. Except instead of doing this double stop, we do, which is the kind of Chuck Berry thing. It's actually if we're playing here, if we're playing the major third and the flat 7, with this we're playing the 6th and the flat 3, but we're kind of teasing it slightly sharp. It's that Chuck Berry thing that he got from T-Bone Walker. So what you want to do, you're playing 5 on the B string and 6 on the high E, and you're kind of indiscriminately teasing both notes sharp, with the idea of bending them both up a semitone, but you're not going to make it. It's just sort of implicit. You're just kind of implying that that's your intentions, if that makes sense. In fact, it sounds quite cool if you kind of slightly underbend. You're not going to be able to bend those 2 strings perfectly in tune anyway. Well, you can, but it's a little bit difficult. So, in other words, we're kind of going for this, which again will be the guide tones. That would be the flat 7 and the major third of a G7 chord, but we're 1 fret under, but we're kind of doing that train whistle kind of, train whistle promise, I call it. You're kind of promising to bend to a chord tone, but not quite making it. So, put that together. We've got 3, 4, and. And then we go back to the this bit again, which is the first part. after that we play a... That's a diminished half whole lick. I won't go into the ins and outs of you know, kind of diminished stuff. You know, just learn the lick as is. But it's a scale that you can play for a slightly outside sound over dominant chords, which consists of just half tones and whole tones. It's a symmetrical scale. So as you can see here, we've got half tone, whole tone, half tone, and it just kind of goes in that sequence. So that's the first part. You know, it does sound slightly outside. So we've got 6, 7, 6. This is all kind of, you just pick the first note and the rest are hammer-ons, pull-offs and slides. So 6, 7, 6, 4, slide to 3. So that's the next part. So we're playing almost the same kind of pattern on the B string, but we're kind of 1 fret lower than we were on the high E. You'll see, yeah, if you mess around with the scale enough, you start to see the symmetry. I have a course called Blues the Next Level, which has some kind of diminished half whole licks that you might want to check out. So that's 6 on the B string, 3 on the high E, back to 6, 5, 3, slide down to 2, slide back up to 3. The next part is just outlining the dominant 7 chord, but these notes also feature in the diminished half whole scale in G. So we've got 4 on the G, 5 on the D, pull off to 3, 5 on the A, and then 3, hammer to 5 on the D, and pick it again. And I just hang on that for a whole bar, and then, yeah, I'll just play a, which was just off the cuff. We've got a similar lick up there in one of the earlier licks, but we play 3 on the D, and then we do a kind of grace note slide from 5 on the A string down to 3, down to 1, back to 3, and then that's 1, 2 on the A, and an open G. So that's minor third, major third, root. Just to kind of top us off, and it kind of takes us over the line. So, you know, you don't kind of finish. It's not an even number of bars. It's like a little tag on the end, which is quite a cheeky thing to do in a solo sometimes. So that symmetrical scale, that diminished half whole scale, it's an 8-note scale, but it's got, you could think of it as having 4 outside notes and 4 inside notes. The 4 inside notes are actually a dominant 7th arpeggio. So you've got the major third, outside note, you've got the root, then you've got the 7th, which is a chord tone, you've got an outside note, then you've got the 5th, then you've got an outside note. So there's a lot of kind of, you know, that's why it sounds quite cool. Because it's got as many inside notes as it has outside notes. In actual fact, it's basically blues harmony. It's got a lot of the same notes that we've already been playing, but it's just, you know, different kind of emphasis. Can sometimes give you that, you know, if you like Robin Ford, it can kind of give you that kind of outside-y kind of flavour, which is cool. have fun with that, and let's look at the next solo.